A prayer of Moses, the man of God. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all the generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, forever you had formed the earth and the world. From everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You return man to dust and say, Return, O children of man. For 1,000 years in your sight are but as yesterday when it is past, or as a watch in the night. You sweep them away as with a flood. They are like a dream. Like grass, they are renewed in the morning. In the morning it flourishes and is renewed, and in the evening it fades and withers. For we are brought to an end by your anger. By your wrath we are dismayed. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins, in the light of your presence. For all our days pass away under your wrath. We bring our years to an end like a sigh. The years of our life are 70, or even by reason the strength of 80. Yet their span is but toil and trouble. They are soon gone, and we fly away. Who considers the power of your anger and the wrath according to the fear of you? Teach us to number our days, that we may get a heart of wisdom. Return, O Lord, how long? Have pity on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your steadfast love, that we may rejoice and be glad all of our days. Make us glad for as many days as you have afflicted us, and for as many years as we have seen evil. Let your work be shown to your servants and your glorious power to their children. Let the favor of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish the work of our hands upon us. Yes, establish the work of our hands.
Thank you so much, Paul. Church, is that not an unbelievable psalm? Amen? Does that not speak to the very heart of your soul in this moment? And if it isn't, if for some reason you're still waking up, remember we have coffee in the back. And if coffee isn't too much for you, I think the Word of God should get you really, really ready to listen from your heart this morning. So let me pray. Heavenly Father, help us in this moment right now, because we really are like little children before you. We really do not understand our own lives. We hardly even understand our own thoughts, Heavenly Father. And this psalm reminds us that we have a refuge in you always. It shows us, God, that no matter what is happening in our lives, no matter what is going on around us, in the world, even in this nation, it doesn't matter the darkness that is shrouding us, Lord, shrouding our eyes, shrouding our hearts, shrouding our thoughts, because you are always amongst us, always working in our lives, always, Lord, through the good and the bad. And this psalm is so precious to us, God. It is so wonderful. And I pray, God, that you would just teach us how to truly be satisfied in your life that you have given to us, Lord. Amen. Well, church, I think this is the beauty of the Lord's sovereignty in our lives, because I want you to understand something, that at the beginning of September, my seminary class started, and it was called Interpreting Genesis through Song of Solomon, and I had no idea what I was in for. I've written paper after paper every single week. I've read all the way through Job at this point, and by God's grace, it has brought me through the Psalms as well, because we read the Psalms before Job. But what I'm getting to the point of is that his sovereign hand prepared me to understand more and be ready to share with you this morning of how wonderful the Psalms are. Because maybe some of you don't know this, but the context of every psalm is that they were curated during the Babylonian exile, when the Jews were taken from Jerusalem and brought into a foreign land where they had lost absolutely everything that gave them their special identity as a nation, and brought amongst complete pagan God-haters, and left there for over 70 years. And so if we really quickly turn to 2 Kings 25, I'm going to read you the history of what happens before Psalms. And it's simply this. On the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine was so severe in the city, that is the city of Jerusalem, that there was no food for the people of the land. Then the city was broken into, and all the men of war fled by night. Now, on the 7th day of the 5th month, almost just a month later, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. He burned the house of the Lord, the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem. Even every great house he burned with fire. So all the army of the Chaldeans who were with the captain of the guard broke down the walls around Jerusalem. Now, to us, we might go, well, Pastor Nick, I don't really fully understand why that is so important. Imagine that you are, first of all, taken away from your home. You are not ever allowed to return back. And not only are you taken away from your home, you get word that just a month later, some person has come and burned the whole house down so that it would not be remembered at all. Think about that in your own house and imagine it being the entire city that you grew up in and have only known. And most important, the house of the Lord. Now, I was trying to think of what would be equivalent to the Jews' iconic worship of their temple. Remember, this is the temple that Solomon built. This is the temple that they would go up to, that even King David desired to build, but it wasn't to him to do so. And it was destroyed by fire. The very thing that gave them their identity as a nation, the very house of the Lord, the thing that pointed them to God and reminded all of them every day of their loving kindness, was destroyed by fire and gone forever. But what is the first verse of Psalm 90? What is it that Moses reminds us of? Lord, you have been our dwelling place. You have been our dwelling place. What? Remember what Pastor Jared teaches often? The prepositions? In all generations. All generations. And the truth of this is simply that the Lord is always, always with us. Every building that we have been in, everything that might be considered nostalgic in your life that reminds you of some wonderful experience from your childhood or from your teenage years or from your younger years, has really nothing compared to our dwelling place in the Lord. And it's not that it's a dwelling place, it's that it is a refuge for you. It is a place where you can feel the security in your life that you might be missing because your own family has no security, has no structure. You might have felt completely in chaos growing up. you might still feel in that same chaos right now. But if you are here this morning, all you need to remember is that the Lord has been your dwelling place. And if you're like, well, Pastor Nick, I don't even know if he is really for me. I don't even know if the Lord is calling to me. I'm just here because I feel like it's a necessity in my life. Like I just need to be in a place outside of my own house because it's so crazy on Sundays. Well, okay, back that up a second. Do you even know your own thoughts? Do you even know how you get from place to place? What puts that thought in your mind? What has brought you to this seat this morning? Is it because of your own volition you woke up and said, yep, it's Sunday, I got to go to church? Culture is strong, but God is your dwelling place. He has placed all of you in this seat for a reason. It doesn't matter if you're visiting from out of town or if this is once in a month that you decide to go to church, or this is just your first time and you're trying to find a place of your own. He has been your dwelling place. From wherever you have come from, he has always been your dwelling place. He has always been your refuge. Even before you were saved, even before you knew about the Lord, he has been your dwelling place. And now, why can I say that with all the confidence of my soul? It's because I know none of you are smart enough, strong enough, and have the endurance to figure all of that out on your own. To make it through your daily grind in order to get to the seat you are sitting in now. You can't do it. I don't care if you're the strongest Superman construction worker that can lift 5 bundles of shingles and carry it up the ladder himself because you think machinery is dumb because they didn't do it for you. You cannot get through your day without the Lord's grace. So why is he your dwelling place? Because of that truth. And the minute you forget that and start believing it's dependent upon you is when your life falls into chaos and you begin to psychologically deconstruct everything in your heart. I've seen it. I've lived it, folks. I've laid on the ground as a junior in college wondering if life was even worth it. Struggling if I should just jump out the window and give it all up. I have done that. And the only thing that kept me through that night was being on my knees and crying out to the Lord and just asking him, why, and what, and how do I keep going? And you want to know what he said? He said, just go to sleep, son. It's okay. And I crawled in my bed and I fell asleep. And I didn't feel okay at all. I was like, this is dumb. I'm just going to lay here. And I'm going to think about everything going wrong and everything that I need to fix and everything that all the people have told me about that needs to get fixed and all my homework and all of this. And I didn't think a single thing. And I passed out and I fell asleep. And guess what? I woke up the next day and the sun was shining. God had let me get to that part of myself, to the end of that area in my life, to see his faithfulness. To see that life is worth it, no matter how much you struggle. Think of the Jews. They lost everything that gave them their identity. They were taken out of their place, their holy temple destroyed. The walls that were their security and protection, really important in those days, were destroyed. Do you think conquering armies did that on purpose? Yes. That's what armies do when they're trying to conquer a people. What did the Spanish conquistadors do to Latin and South America when they came over? There weren't walls around the villages to destroy. They just started sleeping with every single woman to get their bloodline out. They destroyed their integrity and their identity as a people, and they still, to this day, yes, to this day, 500 years later, struggle with their identity. If you don't believe me, ask my wife. If you don't believe her, let's get on a plane, let's go to Nicaragua, we'll have a party, and I can show you a host of people in those churches that would say exactly what I'm saying, because it is the Lord that has given their identity back, not anything else of their person. And so when the city of Jerusalem was destroyed in this manner, it was the work of Satan to destroy the people that God had lifted up from nothing. And guess what? They're still here. And what do you think that is a testimony for us as? Do you think God will sustain you if we go dark tonight? We no longer have internet. We no longer have use of our phones. Do you think God would sustain you in that moment? Do you believe it, church? Because what really doesn't matter right now, everything in the news, all the politics, all the garbage we get thrown at us every single day, do you think that really matters right now? Or does what really matters is your soul being secure from Jesus dying on the cross? Is that what matters today? Yes. And why does that matter? Remember Psalm 90. You turn man back into dust and say, return, O children of men. Does that not make you feel small? It should. That's what this is for. It should make you feel small, but it should make God feel really big. That's what this is. This is for you to recognize who you are. Man is man. No matter how great of a job you have, no matter how many things you can accumulate in a lifetime, no matter how much you've accomplished or conquered in your days of hard work and effort, you are still a man and still a woman. You are still but dust. For 1,000 years in your sight, God, are like yesterday when it passes, or as a watch in the night. Interesting there, the beauty of Hebrew poetry is they like to emphasize the things that really matter. So 1,000 years are like yesterday, 24-hour period, or a watch in the night, 8 to 12-hour period. Just keeps getting smaller. Meaning 1,000 years, it doesn't really matter to our comparison what it means to the Lord. It might as well be a second. That's how big our God is. Because in verse 5 it says, you have swept them away like a flood, and they fall asleep. And it goes even further. It says, in the morning they are like grass which sprouts anew. In the morning it flourishes and sprouts anew. It's repeating again, right? Toward evening it fades and withers away. That is our life. Our life in a 24-hour period. That is how small we are. But are you significant? Immensely. It continues, for we have been consumed by your anger and your wrath we have been dismayed. Remember your history, church. Why, oh why did Babylon take over Jerusalem? Why did that happen? It was because Israel had disregarded the Lord. The spiritual state of the country was so bad, they were sacrificing children in the streets. They had rejected God and worshiped him with all of their fervor in ways that were not ever meant to be worshiped. They had added gods from other cultures that they were told not to do, But they had added gods from other cultures onto the God of the universe. And year after year had been called out by prophet after prophet to return to the Lord, to give it up. And of course, there were some good kings that brought that about, and there were bad kings that made it worse. But what happened, happened. It didn't matter. They were brought about to their final destruction and carried away from their homeland, stripped of their identity. But what's beautiful about all this? Is that not a perfect picture of you and your sin? Is that not a perfect picture of my sin? Is that not a perfect picture of our country and our sin? And is there hope with that? Is there hope, church? What do we see in Psalm 90? Is there hope? It continues, you have placed our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your presence. For all our days have declined in your fury. We have finished our years like a sigh. The beauty of this, it's a confession. What is the author, the psalmist, saying? He is confessing his sin to the Lord. Even his secret sins are in the light of God's presence. And we are consumed by your anger and wrath. Is God's justice correct that we should never be with him ever because of our sin? Is he right to say that we have no merit in ourselves and do not belong to God? Is he right if he were to say that? If he were to throw us off forever and wash his hands of us for good? Is God correct in doing so? He is. And what in this area of the psalm does the psalmist finish? He says, who understands the power of your anger and your fury? But why? According to the fear that is due you. God's anger and fury is not to smite you in your sin. It is not to cast you down and lay you in the dust so you can never get back up. It is not to step on you, so to say, and keep you there for all eternity. That is not God's anger and sin, and that is not the purpose of it. The purpose comes in the next line. It says, to teach us to number our days, that we may present to you a what? A heart of wisdom. What is a true heart of wisdom, church? The understanding and knowledge of your sin before a holy God. And to what purpose? To humble you. To humble you. There's a reason when I read 2 Kings that I started early in the chapter. Do you remember what it said? There was no food in the city and the land. They were starving to death. All the food was gone. So before they even get the city taken over, before they even hear that the temple is burned up, they have nothing to eat. What does that remind you of? What story did we just finish? Ruth? 2 times God uses a famine to bring his people to their knees, to remind them that he is still there and will provide. And though the details in that story are not so true, or not true, not clear is what I mean. But if you think about that story, Elimelech and Naomi left. They left Bethlehem. They didn't have any food. They decided to go to Moab. Their 2 sons marry Moabite women. They die, Elimelech dies, and Naomi and Ruth get back to Bethlehem, and guess what? There's still people there. Did that shock anybody when you read that? That should have been like, wait a second. They had a famine. This family left to try to find food. So how did all these families get, how are they there? Is God good that he would sustain you when there's a famine? That he would provide for the people in light of a famine? Boaz, somehow we find out in chapter 2 of Ruth that he's a wealthy man. If there's a famine in the land, farmers, do you get wealthy? Do you make your money? Maybe this day and age with all the insurance fraud, you can get away with that. But I don't know. The truth is that God sustained them. He provided for them so that when Ruth and Naomi return during the harvest, they not only survive, they live an abundant life. And we get to see God's wonderful provision throughout the entirety of that story. And what is the lesson behind it? That God will provide no matter what is going on a national level or even just within a singular city. He will always provide for your needs. And why does that matter in context to this psalm? Because remember, they are in exile looking back of what all that God has done. They are calling out to the Lord in their heart and brokenness. The same way that we must know Naomi and Ruth did throughout the book of Ruth. So why is it so critical that in our great times of need and darkness, our greatest times of struggling, that we are on our knees crying to the Lord? Why is that so important? Does it change God's heart when we pray? Does it make him go, I better pay attention to them? They are like really praying. These people, not so much. They're just sitting down. They don't even get on the ground to pray to me. No, it changes your heart. It molds your heart to the Lord's. It brings you to the point of the way Job was when he said, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. God bless, praise be to the Lord. It teaches you to endure in suffering with joy. Why do you think Nehemiah 8:10 is so beautiful? The joy of the Lord is your strength. Because at that point in history, the Israelites had gone back. They had just finished building the wall, and they're weeping, remembering everything that all their ancestors had gone through. And they're weeping. And what do the priests tell them? Don't weep. Your joy is that God has brought you to this moment. He has led you through those dark times. He has brought you back from exile. He has provided you in ways that you don't even realize yet. And he will continue to do so. That is his steadfast promises. And that brings us to the end of this psalm. It says, verse 13, do return, O Lord. How long will it be? And be sorry for your servants. Is that not a repentance? Is that not how you should repent? That you are turning away from your sin and you are calling to the Lord, come please to me. Please come to me, Lord. I cannot do this. Please be sorry for me, God. Because I need you desperately. I am so weak. I am so frail. In the next line, oh, satisfy us in the morning with your loving kindness. Who calls to the Lord to satisfy them unless they are unsatisfied? You don't desire satisfaction unless you are unsatisfied. When you're hungry, what do you desire? Food. young adults, when we go up to the mountains and backpack for 2 to 3 days, and we come down the mountain, what do we go to? Didn't even finish the question. Why do we do that? Because it is satisfying. Trust me, when you get to the mountains and you eat dried food and you're foraging berries and you're eating things that you probably would not eat very much of on your own volition and desires here, and you get back to a place that magically you say a number and this giant sack of food comes out, do you ever think how ironic that is? Give me number 3. And then all of a sudden it's like this giant sack of food. You don't even have to say what you want. You just say a number and you get it. And you're eating ice cream and you're eating a burger and then you're eating more ice cream and you're eating the rest of your fries. You're satisfied, right? I mean, it might not be the best food for you. It gives you a lot of calories. It might not be, like a kale salad with nuts and berries, but it satisfies you. So think of the satisfaction of the Lord. Church, do you need satisfaction every day of your life from God? Do you need that satisfaction from Jesus every day of your life about your salvation? That confirmation that, yes, you are my son and daughter. Yes, you are the one that I called from darkness. And I called you singularly. I didn't say, okay, this group here, come to me. Yeah, I'll label you A, B, C, and D. This group here, you're going to be 1, 2, 3. No, he calls you by your name because he knows the very hairs on your head. If that doesn't satisfy every deep longing in your heart that you have searched your life long, that you have desired to be filled all your days, then you're looking in the wrong place. Only the Lord can do that. Only Jesus, dead on the cross for your sins, can fill you up with a satisfaction so deep that you can lose your entire family and go through all the pain of that betrayal. Right? Matthew 10, just like last week. And suffer the loss of even your best friends. People you grew up in your childhood with and spent days running around on their farm with. You can lose all of that in light of Jesus and still feel a satisfaction that you could barely express in words. That is what we need as a church body. People are dying. Young people are dying. People are making decisions that is ruining their health for the rest of their lives. And they are deciding to do things in their way instead of living in the fear of the Lord, according to Him, according to all that He has called you to. People are lost in darkness. And in this time of year, it's so wonderful. It is so wonderful. When Pastor Hamilton and Jill were here, and they wake up at 6:30, 7 in the morning, and it's still dark out. That, by the way, that never happens in Nicaragua because they're right next to the equator. And the light, it doesn't change there. It's like 6:30 to 6:30, there's light pretty much all around that time. It does change slightly, but not as dramatic as here. And they're like, why is it still dark out? Like, did I set my alarm right? And am I up too early? And then when it goes down around 5, what does Isaiah say? The light shone in the darkness. Christ's light shines in the darkness of your souls. It satisfies you with God's loving kindness. And this is a very, very important word. Do not ever skip this word. Every time you see loving kindness in your Bible, you circle it, you put a star, Put a happy face with stars for eyes or hearts. Whatever you need to make that the most precious word in your Bible. And why? Because that word is chesed in Hebrew. That is the word God used in his covenant to say, I will never change towards you. I will always love you. And guess what? He's true. His loving kindness has never changed. We are looking at a psalm curated during the time of the Babylonian exile that we are reading this day, and we know the whole history of the Jews, and his loving kindness was true. From the book of Genesis, we had the promise of the Messiah that would come and save the world, and we look at an empty cross this morning, knowing that there is no body in a grave and that you have salvation in your hearts if you have received that from the Lord. That is the promise of loving kindness. That is the character of God in your life. And it will never change. No matter how far you're like, forget about it, I'm going my own way, Jesus. I don't think you're really that good. I don't think you're really that great. People talk about you, but really, if I'm honest, they're kind of crazy. These preachers up here, they get a little too excited on Sunday morning. Well, I'm sorry. Maybe you haven't experienced the amazing, loving kindness of God in your heart yet that you need to. Forget about yourself. Think for a moment about your future life after death. This world that we live in the United States, has done everything to cover up that thought as much as possible. Just get up by your bootstraps and start working, son. If you're not liking the way that you're living, go find something else. If you don't like the job that you're experiencing, go find something else. Everything that this culture brings into your life is garbage. Because it says you can always find something better. You just have to work a little harder or maybe a little more creatively to get it. You can't work harder or creatively to get salvation, folks. Why? Because God calls you to him. So if you think that as a sinner, God has reached down from heaven to pull you to himself, and that is the only way you can get to God, does it not make it more precious for you? Isn't that more beautiful that you realize you have done absolutely nothing in your life to get closer to Jesus? The fact that you're here in these seats is a grace from the Lord. The fact that you are actually breathing is a grace from the Lord. It doesn't matter what has happened in your life. It doesn't matter the sins that you have struggled with. What matters is that God has called you freely to him. You are here. You have to believe that. You are not here just by routine and exercise. You are here because God has called you. He has used circumstances in your life to bring you in this seat this morning. And if you don't believe that, you are rejecting the grace of God and saying that your way is better. You are saying that, nope, I figured this all out on my own, Jesus. Who are you? I don't even know who you are. I don't even see you right now. I'm smarter than you. So when we end in Psalm 90, why does it say this? Make us glad, right? This is kind of interesting, a bit of a paradox. According to the days you have afflicted us. Did you catch that when Paul read it this morning? And the years we have seen evil. Shouldn't we be glad for all the wonderful, precious moments we have with our children, or the moments we dream of when we have kids or get married, or the moments we have when we're playing with our brothers on Christmas morning of all our wonderful toys? Shouldn't we be just glad about that? Why is the psalmist saying, be glad according to the days you have afflicted us and the years we have seen? Did you already forget verse 12? Teach us to number our days, that we may get a heart of wisdom. Your joy in life does not hinge on anything. It doesn't hinge on the emotion of the moment. It doesn't hinge on the provision of the day. It doesn't teeter-totter according to the whim of the world. It doesn't hinge on anything. Your joy is an open hand from God Himself that will never fall down. Your joy comes from the Lord alone. It comes from Him giving you the number of your days, the afflictions, the sufferings, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and even the ugliest. And it shows you to have joy. Why? Because that hand from the Lord never changes. It never moves or wanes from lack of strength, or it never gets tired from being held out to you. If He has called you, He will stand there until the moment you are broken and humbled by the evil in your own life. That is why He says, "And the years that we have seen evil make us glad." I mean, what do they do these days? Mind blown, mister. Okay? Sorry, I had to go back to teacher moment for a second. But think about that. Your struggles, your difficulties, the hardship that you have lived all the days of your lives, or maybe just some, is all meant to make you happy and joyful because the Lord has brought you through them. He has sustained you through them and carried you through them. Young people, what I am preaching right now is not for the old adults that are like, maybe I'll get to that moment when I suffer a little bit. Trust me, you don't want to go through those moments of darkness, even though you will, and there's no way to get around it. You don't want to get to those moments and then think, okay, now I'm ready. I'm going to confront this right now. What happens, young people? Do you know? When you don't prepare yourself for the field of battle and you get to those dark moments? Have you thought of that? Have you thought that through? Because I know a lot of the youth don't think things through. They just do it. Trust me, my son this morning was running around with a hat over his eyes. He thought it was funny. And he literally jumped on the couch, ran across it, and jumped off the couch, not even knowing that he had done it. And I had to catch him before he smashed his face on the corner of a table. I was like, Caleb, what? And I caught him right as he almost hit his head. Youth, your days of training are now. And you might have darker days than most of us adults have experienced. And I don't mean to make you feel bad about that. And you're not allowed to have self-pity. But it is not very exciting, the future. We don't know what's going to happen in this nation. But of course, we don't live according to what will happen. But I speak to all of you young adults that are here in this room and listening online. This is your time of training. You do not come to church to listen to some middle-aged person talk to you very loudly about God. And I don't raise my voice normally, right? Maybe, honey? I speak because I know that this is the very, very depths of your soul and its needs. All of you need to hear that. This is really important for all of you. This is not something that we could throw off for a day and come back to next week. This is not something that we can play around with any longer. If the news is not making you tremble and fear, in a sense, humanly, then you need to listen to the Word of God and let it be that way. Because there is not a lot of very good excitement for what I see coming from the news. But what is exciting and joyful for me is that I know God is in control. I know that we will go through times of testing, and I know that He has not forgotten nor forsaken us at all. Just like Psalm 90 says, He will satisfy you in the morning. Why the morning? Because there's a morning every day. Do you ever wake up and it not be morning? You don't skip morning and get to the afternoon and go, oh, lunchtime, great, wonderful. Even for those that have night shifts that go to bed at 4 o'clock and they wake up at lunch, doesn't mean the morning didn't happen, right? God's satisfaction is new every morning. His loving kindness is new every morning for all of us. And here's the interesting thing. If we jump to Lamentations, this is written, just listen, sorry, I don't mean to say jump, but we're going to jump as a group as you listen to what I say. This is written from the perspective of a man looking back on Jerusalem and everything. And he says, remember my affliction and my wandering, the wormwood, and bitterness. Surely my soul remembers and is bowed down within me. This I recall to mind, therefore I have hope. And here it is. Here's that word again. The Lord's loving kindnesses, multiple now, plural, indeed never cease. For His compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. You see, the Bible is so beautiful. If you read it, and this might be a big challenge for some of you, but I know for people like Rebecca, who just probably reads more than anyone here combined, if you read the Bible, Genesis, just finishing in Malachi, read it all the way through, and you just track that one word, loving kindness, you will find it in just about every single book of the Old Testament in the context that it never changes. It never goes away. So if the Bible tells us that, in my thoughts of a semi-mature man can change instantly in a blink of an eye, but the Bible tells me that. What should I really cling to more? Should I just cling to those immature, fast-changing thoughts? What do you think, young adults? Is that going to make you feel better? Or if you can read a book that solidly declares God's loving kindness to you, book after book, chapter after chapter, what will get you through the day more? The thoughts that, well, it doesn't matter what happens to me, I am going to Hawaii next year, and that is going to be my excitement for the rest of these months. Trust me, I've seen that. I know I've mentioned this before, but I will never forget being in Phoenix in the airport and watching an elderly couple in wheelchairs being brought to the plane. And the waitress of the restaurant that I was going to was so happy. She was like, I was like, well, this is emotion that you don't see very often from waitresses. And she's pushing them along, and she had just heard the story. They had saved their entire lives to go on a trip to Hawaii. And I'm really happy. But they couldn't even walk. They were on a wheelchair. Have you ever tried to go through sand in wheels? It really doesn't work. I mean, maybe in Hawaii, because it's Hawaii, they have like giant wheelchairs with giant wheels that go through sand so you can have more access for the elderly. That would be a loving thing. If there's any inventors in the room, throw it out there. Give me, some of the idea for the patent, but go do that. Maybe that they need that help. But think about that. You wait your entire life for something so exciting and precious to you as a couple. And okay, great. They were very good stewards, and they waited, and they were very patient. There's a lot of lessons to be seen in that. But you don't have to wait for that satisfaction. Your satisfaction can be today from the Lord. Because really, that trip to Hawaii, as wonderful it could be, even if you're a young person and you're out there surfing the waves and living it up with your Mai Tais and pina coladas and having a great old time, how long is that really going to last? A week? Maybe 2 if you saved up enough for that? But it's still 2 weeks of your lifetime. And God has given you a lifetime of satisfaction in Him. Isn't that wonderful? You could be in February here working on the side of the mountain and it's negative 40 and your eyelids are freezing shut. That kind of does happen. I don't mean to scare some of you. But you could be just as satisfied as if you were in Hawaii. That is the goodness of God played out before you. That is your Lord and King. That is the one who has given you the satisfaction that you need before Him. And so how do we finish with all of this? It says, let your work appear to your servants and your majesty to their children. See, God is never worried just about one person. He is worried about generations of people. He's not worried just that Paul and Addie have a baby next year. You're welcome, Grandma. He is worried about the generations of Paul and Addie. He is worried about your children's children. He wants them to know the same satisfaction. Let the favor of the Lord our God be upon us and confirm for us the work of our hands. Yes, confirm for us the work of our hands. That repetition is so important. And so how do we respond to all of this? What do we say to the Lord our God? 1 Peter gives us a great approach. You younger men, be subject to your elders, and all of you clothe yourselves with humility. What? Humility toward one another. For God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that He may what? Exalt you at the proper time, casting all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. Isn't it interesting that it says there's anxiety, but He still cares for you? So what does that tell you? You will have anxiety, but God still cares for you. His satisfaction is true. And what's the best way to do this, church? Church, what is the best way to live this out? Romans 15 says, each of us is to please his neighbor for his good, to his edification. Why do you think the United States is such a mess? Has anybody pondered that lately? I mean, it's a cesspool after cesspool of junk and terrible stuff. Why? Because nobody lives this way. Not even the people in the church. I struggle to live like that. But it tells us, Paul commands us to please your neighbor for his good, not your good, for his edification, not your edification. And why do we do this? Because Christ did not please himself. So if you want to live in the satisfaction of the Lord every day, don't wake up in the morning ready to live for yourself. Don't wake up the morning thinking about everything that you need to get done, everything that God has put in your path to do. And yes, that is important. I don't minimize by that any means. But consider your brother and sister sitting right next to you. Consider the person that you have been called to be with. And if you're like, well, but I'm just sitting next to them today, it doesn't mean I'm called to be with them. Well, are we a church? Church? Are we a church with other people in the next service? Amen. Are they, your brothers and sisters, the same as the one that you're sitting next to? Yes. Should you be alongside them in the same way to do good for them and to edify them? Yes. That is why the church exists. We are called to die for one another, if that should be, to give our lives to one another, if we are called to do that. And that is how we find true satisfaction in Christ, when we stop suffering in vain, thinking about all the betrayal we've been through, thinking about all the things that we need to be provided for us just to get through the rest of the month with our bills. And begin to think about the people that God has brought alongside your life so that you may care for them with the Word of God. I am not calling you to go out and buy Ferraris for everybody, okay? We don't need more stuff. We need the Word of God. We need that to come and dwell deep in our hearts and change us from the inside out. And so as we sing the end of this song, I ask that you would just meditate upon these words. Meditate upon the truth that God has given to us over the years of this song. I'll pray. Lord Jesus, I just call upon your Spirit right now in this moment, and I ask you, Lord, because I want myself to just disappear in this moment, and I ask you, Lord, to please speak to us in our hearts. Whatever word has come from my lips, may it work powerfully in the lives of those who are here in this room, because it's your Spirit coming to them, speaking to them, crying out to them, showing them, Lord, and me, about your loving kindness, about your grace that surpasses all understanding, that you sustained Israel through their exile, that you sustained Ruth and Naomi and provided for them in numerous ways, that you have called us to live lives that endure betrayal, that persevere those hardships and those rejections for the glory of your name. Help us, Lord, because we really don't know what to do. We are, just as Solomon prayed, like children before an almighty God. Give us wisdom. Teach us to number our days. Because if 1,000 years is like a breath for you, then what is 70 or maybe 80 in our life? We are so small. We need you, Lord Jesus, desperately. And I pray that you will give us all the strength to remember this in our minds this week, that it would be a sustaining fountain of joy for our hearts. Amen. Thank you so much for watching Petra Bible Church Bozeman. We will have a new sermon uploaded each week for both English and Spanish services. And remember, hit like and subscribe. Thank you, and God bless.